Good. Yeah, so I've been the church administrator here for 6.5 years. What that means is I really just oversee the business operations of the church. So I get to deal with the budgets and the ministries, making sure that they stay within their budgets and help them to make the little bit that they get go as far as possible. Previous to that, I was in mortgages, and I was also, if you've heard of Dave Ramsey, I was a Dave Ramsey facilitator. So I used to run his financial peace university course in my workplace and then here at the church as well. So you'll hear me reference Dave Ramsey. Actually, some of the handouts I'll give you guys are from the content that he provides, because what he does is actually very good. He takes a very overwhelming situation like finances and debt, and he simplifies it so that anyone at any level can really get a hold of this. And like Trish had said, as chaplains, I was thinking about your role with finances. Money issues affect everyone. Majority of people have some level of money issues. And so for you guys, you need to be prepared so that when people are sitting in front of you, when you have those opportunities to witness and minister to these people, a lot of times their problem that's on the surface isn't really the core. Like, you got to dig deep to find out, and oftentimes you will find some level of money issues to be the problem. And so what I want to do is really kind of give a backdrop, paint a picture of why money does what it does. So I'm going to go through a bunch of statistics here, which I'm going to go through rather quick. If there's one that you want me to repeat, feel free to stop me at any time, or if you have a question, stop me at any time. And I do know statistics are always a little skewed, but the stuff that I'm going to share with you are things that I've looked at multiple platforms, multiple publications, just to verify that they are relatively accurate. So the numbers are regular. So 75% of all Americans are in debt.
75%.
75. So 3 out of 4 people are in debt. Okay? Of those people surveyed, 2 of those 4 feel that they will never be out of debt until they die.
Wow.
Think about that. That right there just sets the tone of why people continue to live in debt. Because we're just taught to. Everywhere you go, everywhere you look, something is being encouraged or forced on us. Things we didn't even know existed. Now we realize we must have them. There's a reason. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but so if you have a car note, you're in debt.
You are in debt.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. So I just
Debt is debt. So you owe someone, you're in debt.
You're in debt.
Yeah. And so that's why we see mini storages popping up just as fast as homes. Because we accumulate so many things, we need more space to save them. Right? And so out of those 75%, 2 of those 4 people feel like there is no hope to ever get out of debt. That's the problem. That's where we start. Roughly, this last year, every person is carrying $9,000 in credit card debt. A perpetual state of $9,000 in credit card debt. This does not include house, car, student loan debt. This is purely just credit card debt. And I'll take a quick bunny trail. If you look at student loan debt, which is at an all-time high, the average repayment is 21 years. That's almost a mortgage for most people, right? So credit card debt. Credit card debt, it's overwhelming people and it's affecting people. The problem with credit card debt is you're paying on something for months and years, and most of the time you don't even remember what you bought to get in that debt in the first place. If you could remember it, you probably resent it because you don't need it, you don't want it, or you threw it away or lost it, right? So that's the problem with credit card debt. There's no emotion to it. We just put out the card. We don't feel the exchange. Like if you had money in your pocket and you have only 20 bucks left to your name and it costs $18, you're going to seriously weigh out, do I really want that? Credit card transactions don't have that emotional connection. It doesn't hurt you until the bill comes in. So, talking about debt. Again, this is a study shared last year. People under 35, on average, are carrying $67,000 in debt.
Wow.
From 35 to 44, $133,000.
Does that include your mortgage?
This does include all debt, mortgages, car notes, so, but you can feel it, start to feel it. This is individuals, not even couples, right? So you're gonna increase that as you merge. From age 45 to 54, 135,000. From 55 to 64, people are carrying 108,000. You are just limping into retirement years with $108,000 in debt. From 65 to 74, hopefully they're in retirement years, $66,000.
Wow.
So for people who don't have a plan, who have lived their whole life, probably paycheck to paycheck, no way Social Security is going to cover that debt load. 75 and older, 35,000 in debt. 75 years old. It's because of the way our culture has created and made debt look so attractive, right? We're told that we must have these things, we must look like this. In order to feel like anything, in order to establish our value, we must acquire these things. And so that's a problem. 70% of our gross domestic product is in consumer sales. So our culture, our economy thrives on us buying our own stuff so we can store it. It's a sick cycle of what we've been. And so if we go back 2 generations, our grandparents paid for cash for everything. There was no extension of credit like there is today. But today, they even start getting a hold of kids in middle school, actually earlier than that. All these video games, Xbox, Apple, you have to charge it in order to get it. There's no more saving your money, go to the store to buy a video game. You have to acquire it digitally. That's starting that process of no emotion purchasing. And so debt is a problem. And the problem is we glamorize it, and we've come to the point that debt is normal. Yeah?
The way of the world is going to be credit card.
There's a difference between buying on credit or going into debt for purchases, right?
Right.
And
I
so-
buy in credit, but I pay it off every month.
Right. So the idea, what we'll get to, is to put emotion back into the way we spend, right? Right now, people react when they spend with a credit card. I've had a horrible day. I'm going to buy myself a new shirt. My marriage is rough. I'm going out to eat. I don't want to be with him or her. Right? We use it as a crutch not to deal with things. As chaplains, this is where you guys will come into some of this stuff. Is you're going to be able to identify the problem, which if their marriage is struggling, it's probably because they have money issues. But they just want to focus on the fight, which we'll get into that. So, and if you think about it, I don't know that they even sell piggy banks anymore. You have little kids. Do they sell piggy
Yeah,
banks?
they do.
The whole
Way,
concept.
way
The
far.
whole concept is crazy. I'm going to pay for something to protect my money against me, and then we have to smash it. Not only do we smash the bank, we smash our dream of whatever we're really saving for. We are just overwhelmed with the pressure to acquire things. So you're starting to get a feel of how bad our society is in regards to debt. Let me tell you some of the studies that are showing the effect it has on your health.
Ooh.
And this is where you're going to start getting your teeth to sink into situations when you're meeting with people. So this is all proven and through studies. And again, this isn't every case is because of money, but oftentimes in these cases it goes back to money. Depression. People go into depression because of debt. Insomnia, heart attack, high blood pressure, stress. The number one cause of stress is debt, is money problems. 69% of the people who are suffering from stress is traced back to money issues. At the core. Suicide, 16% of suicide is over debt. Denial, anxiety, headache, eating disorders, feeling of inadequacy, weight loss and gain, substance abuse. There's actually even a syndrome of debt anger syndrome. These are people that get so angry over the debt the hold that debt has on them, that they can't control their anger, they can't control themselves. Debt angers them. We should see a problem here. We should see a trend. That debt is absolutely affecting us as people. Not just our wallets. It's affecting our health. And you guys know, you guys deal with the public. When these people are coming in with whatever reason they're sitting before you, think about some of those things how many people their health is bad. Now, if you were to have that conversation and trace it back, they may not even realize it's because of debt. Debt is just that underlying thing that is causing their emotions to act the way they do in their workplace or their marriage or with their kids or whatever. You guys get to fill in the blank on that. So you start to see the effects on our health. How about on our relationships? The number one cause for fighting in marriages is money. And I'm sure you guys get to deal with a lot of those situations, right? Marriages that are not doing well. Spouses that aren't doing well because of money. We always want to look at the other individual and place blame on what they do and not do, but ultimately there is something at the core that gets them to not be able to treat each other the way they should. Depending on what publication you read, it would say that divorce, money is the number one cause of divorce outright. An article in Forbes magazine last year said 28% of the people live paycheck to paycheck.
Only 28%? I would have thought more, actually.
Only 28%.
Yeah.
Paycheck to paycheck.
I would have thought more.
Yeah. And so the problem with that, and that's still a lot, so that means 28% of the people are willing to say that they have no extra money. That when they get the check, there's already a lot of hands waiting for their share. Most people can have a little bit of discretional money, like I think the average is 26 bucks. The average person has no idea where 26 bucks goes every week because they don't track it. If we just did some simple math, 26 bucks a week adds up to something nice at the end of the year. But they have no idea because nobody looks at how they spend or where they spend. It's not emotional, I'll just make more. And so the problem with that is there is no room for an emergency. There's no room for a hardship. If you're living paycheck to paycheck and a hardship comes, now they're in a real bind. So I don't know the individuals that you're meeting with, but I'm guessing these are a lot of the situations. I know at the church, this is what we get, the phone calls, hey, my heat's getting turned off. I just got a flat tire. It's situational, we'll call them disasters, because they don't know what to do, right? And so, statistically, every person you're going to come in contact with, the majority that you're going to come in contact with, they're going to have some level of money issue. And so this is where you as chaplains get to take what you do even a step further. You get to be a part of the process to solve something so much greater than their surface issue that they came to see you for. And so what I'll do is I will go through that, and we'll get into some practices of how to do that. But the good thing that you guys have that they don't have, I would assume, and I could be wrong in this, but the majority of the people you're meeting with are not saved. They're not Christians. Maybe some of them are. We have the blueprint for how to handle money. It's the Bible. The Bible talks about money, wealth, prosperity, debt. It talks about every aspect of finances. And so as believers, it's our responsibility to read through Scripture and know what God says about it. It's our responsibility as individuals to be good stewards of the resources He gives us. So when you meet with people, I'm not suggesting that you start with telling them what God wants them to do with their money, but you can show them without even saying a word. And this is where Dave Ramsey puts majority of his teaching, is he takes the principles of God and he makes them very simple, because they are simple once we start applying them. It just requires a plan and some discipline. So if we look in Scripture, Scripture talks about surety, not co-signing or taking on responsibility for someone else's debt. It warns us about being greedy. It warns us about pursuing stuff. It encourages contentment and to be satisfied with what we're given and what we have. It talks much about character, how we deal with people, how we do our transactions and our interactions financially. It encourages us to work hard. You know, there's no room for laziness in that model. It talks about saving. We are to plan for the future. Right? We are. It talks about being generous. God loves generous givers. And when you're not in debt, guess what you get to be? Super generous. That should bring a smile to everyone's face. Like, there's just something fun about being generous. And ultimately, God provides everything. It's not ours. We're just stewards. We're just money managers. And if we can get to the point where we don't say, my money, and we start spending and handling it like it's someone else's, and we'll be responsible for that, changes a little bit of what decisions we make. And then ultimately, for this class, God says much about debt. It says a ton about being in debt, being indebted to someone, right? And so most of you probably are familiar with Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way they should go. When they're old, they won't depart from it. Very next verse is, the rich rule over the poor. The borrower is enslaved to the lender. Well, part of our teaching up that next generation is telling them how to handle finances. We as adults do a horrible job teaching the next generation how to be responsible, warning them against the pitfalls of stuff, right? It's a cycle we have to break. We want to break. Because as parents, as grandparents, just as elders wanting to see the next generation not be enslaved, in bondage to stuff and to debt. So knowing what the Bible says about finances is going to be the platform for each and every one of us as we speak into these situations. And so for you guys as chaplains, I started to try and think about how I meet with people and how you're going to meet with people and how this will be an opportunity for you guys to do something with them. And so I think there's going to be two situations where it's going to really come down to. First is the immediate. I look at these as like the putting out fire situations. Someone's coming to you because they're the paycheck to paycheck and they are in a situation, right? So oftentimes, again, at the church, it's just, hey, can I have this much money for my utility bill? Can I have this much? And so what we have to do is be responsible with not enabling them to stay in that process of just being indebted to people. And so first thing we're going to have to do is ask questions, right? So when the individual comes in and, you know what, my tire blew out, so I had to buy a tire, so I can't pay my gas bill. Okay. How often are you late on your gas bill? Have you called the utility company? Have you worked, did you ask for a payment? Did you ask for a reduction? Did you ask for a payment plan? Like, start changing the way they respond to situations. This will be ultimately the platform for the greater one, but for the initial one, the putting out the fires, these are the things you have to help them identify the cause of what really got them into that situation. And then you're going to be able to create a solution, whether it's you feel generous and you just want to bless them with that gas bill, amen. Or resources. As chaplains, I believe you probably have access to a resource guide. I know at the church, I have a guide that pretty much any situation that comes across my desk, if someone's in need, I have something from Macomb County where I say, okay, you need housing, you need help with utilities, you need lawn maintenance because you're elderly. I have a resource that the government's already put in place, the community can go to. And so I did share that with Trish, so she can share that with you guys if you don't have something. But those kind of resources are very good because you're not, almost always in those situations, those organizations will require them to be a little bit more transparent with how they handle their money. So
Yeah,
they
you have
don't
to qualify.
they don't just give the money. They give the money with contingencies. Okay, well, come in, take a 1-hour counseling class with us, and, right? Because they want to solve that. So that's the first way you're going to help people, is just in the immediate situations. The next one, which is going to be the more beneficial for them, is the long term. This is more of like a financial diet kind of a concept, where maybe they're coming in with the immediate need, but you're able to then get them to the next level. Or maybe they're coming in and you're able to identify, okay, you're going through struggles here, okay, and you finally get to them to a point, well, how's your finances? How are you managing? And you get them to that point where they acknowledge that their finances are not in a good order. And so that's where you guys get to offer your services, to take them through a process. This is not a 1-hour process. This is not a 1-day process. You're going to be committed to them for a few months, maybe even a year. Not every day, but you're going to have contact with them once a month. And so when we look at the long term, these are the people that are just burdened, they're weighed down by debt, and they just want to be free. They don't want to be the 2 out of 4 that says, I'll never be out of debt. They want someone to tell them that there's hope. And you guys get to be those messengers. And so with that, there's a couple different aspects to how you'll walk them through this. And I do have some forms that when we're through here, I'll show them and share them, and you guys can do some examples. But the first one is creating a financial profile. A financial profile is just that. Most people don't ever look at a bank statement anymore. On my phone, I have $7 left, I'll take the super size. They buy off of what their phone, so there's no error, no room for error. Oh, I forgot, I paid that other bill online, and so overdraft fees. So nobody knows where they spend their money.
Also, with like Venmo,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that, that's a big one, like younger generation, they really have no idea because of things like that.
Yeah, exactly. The younger generation, because they've seen a couple generations now of people who just buy everything on credit, and so there's no responsibility. There's no need to feel responsibility. It's not taught. I mean, they used to teach kids in high school how to balance a checkbook. No. People barely write checks anymore. So creating a profile is very important. And so the way I do it is when I meet with people, I ask them to bring either 2 to 3 months of bank statements and credit card statements. Because that is, and this is where it gets fun for me, because I get to start showing them where they spend their money. And it is a fun process because people are like, no way, I do not. I'm like, oh, yes, you do. This is your bank statement. This is your credit card statement. And so it's a little bit of a cumbersome process, but that is the first step in really getting someone free, is putting it right before their face and showing them how they handle money. You'll see a lot of times they have a lot more money than they think they have. They just don't realize how bad they are at spending it. So you ask them to come in with 3 months bank statements and credit card statements, and you sit down and you go line by line. Okay, this one, okay, that's in this category. This one, that's in this category. Okay. And you start profiling how they spend money, because that's going to be a very important step in the process when you try to challenge them to get out of debt. And we'll go into that a little bit more. Next, you're going to start, as you profile them, you're going to start looking at and sharing with them what's healthy and unhealthy spending. So I'll let you guys participate now. What are some healthy expenditures? Utilities. Food, that's an important one. Transportation, right? Lodging, right?
Bowling balls.
Yeah. Outside of that, I would say could borderline be unhealthy. If you're cash strapped, anything out of lodging, utilities, food, and transportation, to me, needs to be questioned. If you're in a pinch, if the economy is rough and you don't have the money, these are the non-negotiables. This is all gonna, whether you like it or not. So getting people to that point of starting to look at it, because you will hear a lot, I need this. No, you don't. And even transportation. I didn't say a car. There's a lot of forms of transportation that cost a lot less. So getting them to start looking at what really is healthy and unhealthy when I start creating where my money goes. This is, again, an important part of it. And then as you start to go through this process is when you'll start giving them some instruction on the things that they should remove, making suggestions. To me, I just like to take the approach, again, because I'm direct, of let's get rid of it all. And usually the shock and horror is on their face.
So it's
But then-
easier to get down to a
Yep.
skeleton than taking it all
Yep,
away.
let's just do this. And there's a couple of reasons why. One is, I want them to know that I'm serious about helping them. Listen, that's all you need to live. Everything else, if you're serious that you don't want to be overwhelmed with that anymore, let's get crazy, let's get radical. Now, I do it also knowing that that's not realistic. They're not going to do that. But I make them fight for the things they want. If someone wants a gym membership, they have to fight and explain to me why. If they want to, a hobby they have is, and here's why. Because if I just think about someone who's in debt and they live paycheck to paycheck, they're miserable because their money they can never do anything with their money. Well, if I put them in a debt plan, a debt reduction plan, and all they can do is pay their bills, they're going to be miserable. Only they're going to stop the plan. So we have to put some little incentives in there, some little rewards in there, because they have to feel like, first of all, they're going to appreciate those things a lot more because he or she almost took that away from me. And they will look at you like they feel you have the authority to take it away from them. And you just have to be firm with them like that, because that's what we're coming in there to create disciplines. That's all this comes down to, is just discipline, understanding and discipline. And so I go to the extreme where everything is on the chopping block. We have to be willing to remove everything as they fight for it. If it's affordable, okay, let's look at putting that back in. Okay, we're going to add that in, and tell me how you're going to use it. Tell me how it's going to be used so that I feel comfortable allowing you to have it in your budget. So the first step of that is creating the financial profile. The next is a plan to reduce and remove debt. I have Dave Ramsey's debt snowball, which is a simple concept, and I'll go through that with you. But ultimately, all you're going to do at this point, once you create the profile, you establish what are the absolute essentials, what are the things we have to keep in it, then we start looking at, okay, everything else is the debt load. This is the weight we want to lose. This is what we want to cut. And so a debt snowball is just organizing all of their debt and giving them a plan and putting something in front of them. Again, they never want to see it in front of them. It's a lot of work, and they don't like the idea of what they're going to see. So creating a plan is a debt snowball, and it's just essentially putting these things in an order so that you can have maximum effect and impact on getting out of debt. And I'll go through that form as we go through this. And you'll want to know that going through this process is you are working at shifting their mindset of how they handle money. In no way at this point are you telling them that this is what God wants you to do. You're just showing them what God has already taught us. To be free from debt. Because when we're free from debt, we can do whatever God puts on our heart to do. That's exciting. And so, and you'll get a lot of the needs and wants, and you're going to have to separate those for these people. Really. And I guess let me pause for a second. By teaching this does not mean that your finances are absolutely perfect. So if someone's out there saying, oh, I have some of these my own struggles, I can't teach this, I'll be a hypocrite, wrong. You can still take the principles of God and apply them. Now, I hope it challenges you that if you're in a situation, go through the process your own. You'll have worksheets, do it on your own. And it is free, but doesn't mean that you can't be a part of this. And so as you go through this, you're also, as you create this profile and you create this debt reduction, you're also going to want to encourage incentives along the way. So milestones. First debt paid off, maybe whatever they like to do. They like to go to movies. They want to go out to eat. They want to buy themselves something. put some reasonable parameters on it, but hey, when you pay off that first debt, celebrate. That's the first step to being free. Maybe the first quarter. Like, it's never a one size fits all, but when you look at their situation, maybe they can't afford to celebrate after one bill. Maybe they have to wait for a quarter. And as it gets, and part of this is getting them to think long term about stuff that they really want. That's actually the third step in the plan is, what's the dream? That's a great question. If you were not in debt, not if I gave you $1 million. If you were not in debt, what would you do? What would you do? Most people are like, I have no idea. Because I've never thought of not being in debt. Or, I've always wanted to do this. Okay, why haven't you done it? Can't afford it. How'd you like to afford it? Right? Motivation for why they're gonna stay the course. We have to get that to come out of them. And this is a great opportunity for you as chaplains to bring in God, right? God put that in your heart. That's not just a random thing. Show them that there's more to it than just, surface things at that point. And so you'll have that opportunity. And the third step of it is to have a plan for the future. And I'm not talking about making investments or whatever. I'm talking about saving money. There's plenty of people out there that can guide them into how to save money, where to save money, the volume of saving money. They're paid professionals. But for you, it's to encourage them to save. Because, first of all, you know what happens? You know what happens when an emergency comes and you have money in the bank? It's not an emergency. It's just a situation. You don't respond. You just pay it and you move on. Oh, my furnace blew out. That's $5,000. Okay. Fortunately, I didn't pay that to credit cards this year, and so I have it in the bank. It's not an emergency when you have the money. And so you start giving them some of this language that is all encouraging, all positive, because there is hope for each and every one of them. If they're willing to discipline themselves for just a little while, they will reap the benefits of freedom from debt. And you will hear, almost always, well, if I just made a little bit more money. It's always just a touch more money. Statistically proven, as soon as you get a raise, you will spend it. You will take on a new debt. You will take on something. No one ever puts it towards their debt. Ever. Because they've been suppressed. I've been wanting this. And, so you will get that, and you just got to be ready to combat it. It's like, no, that's not the solution. More is not the solution. Be content with what you have. Because you know what? If you're happy at work, they're going to compensate you anyways. Because you're a joy to be around, and they can trust you. But if you go in miserable because you're always in debt, you're not probably going to be the one they're looking to promote. You start removing all these hindrances that they've had on their lives that they don't even realize they have, and you show them that there's freedom. Right? And so, more money is not the solution. And so hopefully you're starting to get the feel that getting out of debt is so much more than just affecting your pocketbook. It affects our health. It affects our relationships. It affects our future, right? Every aspect of who we are, money has some pull in that. And obviously, we didn't look at greed, but greed is an issue as well. And you want to talk about wrecking your family and wrecking your relationships? Find someone who's greedy and you'll see it. Because they're fueled by something else. They may be in debt, they may not be, but money issues is not just a poverty issue. It's a mindset. Right? That person probably, very possibly grew up poor and has vowed that they would never live like that. And so they acquire and they will do anything. Right? So you're still going to have opportunities to speak into these situations. So what I do is I have some forms for you guys. So the first form that Paul's going to give you is just really a template. So often people have really no concept of how much of their check should go to any given area in their life. And so again, this is a Dave Ramsey model. You will find that even financial people who aren't spiritual, who aren't religious, will oftentimes still have something for giving. Even if it's not giving at a church level, maybe it's giving to charities, right? So this model just gives you a very basic platform when you're working with people of how much of their check should go in any given area. And so you'll find a lot of times areas that you will find that people like to go outside of standard ratios are housing, automobiles, and food. So those areas, there's just something about it that people will overspend money in, right? And so this car was only $20 a month more. Well, in the grand scheme of things, it was more than you needed. Houses, again, I was in mortgages for a long time, for 14 years. I can tell you that there are plenty of people in my industry that would tell you, oh, you can afford a $300,000 house. Well, they don't take into consideration, a lot of things. It's just the way the structure worked. And so people always got in over their head, which if anyone was around in 2008 and 2009, you saw the effects of that with mass house loss, right? So this is a great template for when you're sitting down with someone and you're looking at how they spend their money, of even giving recommendations. If they're in a car payment or a car lease or even an apartment lease, and it's outside of this, that's going to be a good recommendation of, hey, that's more than you should be allocating to that area based on your income. Yeah.
So this is what we should be allocating.
Right. This is a safe model.
Okay.
And if you look at it, if you take the minimums in it, it's under 100%. If you take the max in every category, it'd be over. So there's going to be some variance. Some people might have health issues where they have more medical costs. There may be people that have dietary issues, so their food costs are more. So it's going to be a give and take, but this is a good line to base off of, a good basis for when you're looking at it. Because otherwise, it's just purely speculative. I think you spend too much on a house payment. Well, why do you think that? Well, because I think that much money is crazy. Well, at least now you can look at, based on your income, here's a standardized model. You shouldn't be spending more than this on a house payment. You should not be spending more than this in transportation. And so this will just, as you're meeting with someone, this will just give you a good platform to start basing things off of.
So you've got personal 5 to 10%. What type of things are in personal?
That could be clothing, household stuff like that isn't groceries. So it's just more of a, what does that individual have?
A coffee pot or
Right.
a shovel?
Right, so things that may be more specific to that person, but there's a variance person to person.
And miscellaneous is anything that you can't figure out what to put in anymore.
And trust me, everyone's got a miscellaneous. Everyone's got a miscellaneous.
But utility seems too low.
10% of your income? Well,
In Detroit, we get stuck in Detroit, so I can tell you, the gas bill in the winter averages $4 something a month. You know, so
400? Yeah.
yes,
So-
that's what we're paying.
So, but the gas rates are the same. The problem is a lot of the homes in Detroit are older homes, not properly insulated.
Yeah,
older
but no, insulated. My mom's house was insulated to the hilt, okay, and her bill was $1,000 a month.
What?
And
$1,000?
right.
Yeah.
When I would go down there, or when she was able to go down there to inquire about it and everything, no, I mean that's just what it is, and whatever. Well, my house is totally insulated. The windows, everything. Where the thermostat is at 72. Come on.
Yeah.
And that's the truth.
And
My bill is high.
I know insurance is expensive in Detroit.
Yeah.
Only because of mortgages. Someone come in and their homeowner's policy would be $1,800. I'm like, how is this possible? And it's just because they will increase rates. And so, as much as they'll say there's not targeted areas, there's targeted
There,
areas,
oh, we
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, and so, even in those situations,
Stuff all the way.
you know, we have to be willing to suggest, hey, I don't know if this is a good community for you. What you're paying in utilities is another house payment.
Yes.
You could have a way nicer house wherever you want for an extra $1,000 a month.
Oh, that's right.
$1,000 mortgage payment, that's probably like a $175,000 house with taxes and insurance included.
I kid you not.
Yeah,
$1,000.
so, and so that's a good point, and so case by case, looking at that, that's a great situation where you get to say, your utilities are way too high in this place. What calls have you made? What situation, is it influenced? And if at the end of the day, it's just how, you know what, have you considered moving? Like, this is not financially wise for you to continue to pay this much in a utility bill.
But you're stuck, my water bill.
With that scenario, even if she can afford it, she may make the decision of, I'm not gonna live in debt because this is where I wanna live, and I need to afford $1,000 gas bill. She's making that conscious decision. But if she's cash strapped, this is a different discussion,
Okay.
right? So it's not just, hey, you don't live in this model, so you're wrong. Although it's a fair conversation to say, why do you pay that? But if they love where they live and they can afford where they live,
No, my
Yeah.
whole thing, we can go on,
Yeah.
is that the 5 to 10%.
Yeah.
Well,
Now,
Madeline,
if-
what you do then is if your housing is more expensive or whatever, I mean, it's like Phil said, it's a movable figure. So if someone has to pay 20% for that, that means you reduce
right.
something
Other
else in a different
areas.
category.
Because at the end of the day, we only have 100% of our money. And so we can only allocate so much to each area. So if one area is high, even outside of this model, it's just gonna scale back in other areas. Yep. Right,
Well, yeah, she didn't have a house,
What?
she already paid her house.
Right.
Okay, yeah, that.
so then maybe she loves where she lives, she can justify it, right? The next form is the monthly cash flow. As you do the profile, this is where you'll start filling it out. And so I do have extras of these. I think you guys are going to do kind of a scenario base when this is over. There's a couple different ways you can do this. You can do it with yourself at home, bring home income in there and start piecing out. All this does is this puts their whole financial situation on one piece of paper, right? And so what you're trying to do is identify what's coming in and what's going out. So as you start to do the profile, this is how you fill it in. This is based on, so as you're doing scenarios today, you can either do it where someone's just saying, hey, I make this much, my bills are this much, and then you can map it out and show them where there's issues. Or you can just say, hey, I make this much, what can I afford in my life? And map it out that way, right? So there's a couple different ways. Or like I said, if you want to do it privately at home, it's a great exercise to do for yourself. So you'll just go through, what's that? Yeah, so you'll go through and start putting, and again, you'll use the first form, trying to get some percentages. Even if you want to use her situation with real high, you can still start mapping out how and where they spend money, okay? And then you'll see on the back side of that, there's a debt column. In order to get those debts, the last form, the debt snowball. The front page explains how to do it, and the back page is really where it's at. The debt snowball is extremely simple once you start putting the debts in front of them. And so really what you do is, whether someone's got 3 debts, 13 debts, 50 debts, is really irrelevant. You may need more pieces of paper in that case, but what you're doing is you're listing every debt that they have, from the smallest balance to the highest balance. I don't care about interest rate. Interest rate is important, but that's not important here, and here's why. Once you give them a profile, you go through a profile, you say, okay, you have this much money coming in, these are the things we have to spend money on, and then you start looking at their debt, and you create a list of those debts in that order. Now what your whole point of this is to get them to put all their extra money towards that first debt. Every time they pay off one debt, they take the balance. So if my first bill is $80, I owe $80 and I pay $30 a month, everything extra I have goes towards paying that off. As soon as I pay that off, that $30 now gets added to the next one. When I pay that one off, continues to add. And so you're getting the momentum because when you have a debt and it's filled with interest, trust me, they love to give you interest. They're not interested in you, they're just interested in your interest, right? And so when you make a payment, it's very slowly biting a little bit of the principal. When you pay extra, it's taking huge chunks from the back. And so you can get these things paid off very, very quickly. And so the fun part is once you profile them and you start showing them, you probably have more money than you know, or you've put everything on the chopping block and you've gotten them to agree, okay, for 6 months or 12 months, I'm gonna cut out all that stuff. So now instead of having 0 extra money, I'm gonna have $300 extra each month outside of my bills. Okay, now we're gonna start putting that $300 towards here. Or, hey, you got free time? How about delivering pizzas? How about doing something? Find something to get them to find some extra money. I know that sounds easier than it is, but really, once you start showing them that there's hope, they'll cut things out of their life to get out of debt. And so the debt snowball works fast, and it's fun to watch it. And that's why they get to see, okay, and the reason we do the smallest one is not only for the momentum, but for the celebration. I already got rid of one debt. I got rid of my second one. I got rid of, you're creating an excitement because they actually see themselves making headway. And so when you do this for them, I always go as far as, okay, this is how much we have to put towards debt. I like to map it out. Hey, in this many months, you'll be debt free. No, that's not possible. Oh, yes, it is. I loved doing this when I was in mortgages. I'd be like, oh, you want to refinance? I can get you out of debt in 12 years. That's not possible. Oh, yes, it is. Let me show you. So it actually, to me, it becomes fun. It's like a game because people don't know. They don't see it. And so you don't have to be a math whiz. It's all simple math. You just have to be able to ask them questions, get them to be transparent with you and themselves, put it on paper, and then give them a plan. And the reason I say this may take 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, because you want to keep them a little accountable. Hey, how's it going? How's that other situation that you originally came in for? But how's the financial situation going? Right? And so it gives you a platform to stay in contact with these people. It gives you an opportunity to encourage them on the successes they have and challenge them if they've gotten a little wayward on it. Hey, get on track. We can get you debt free. What's that thing that you were dreaming about? Maybe it's a dream vacation. Hey, next year, don't forget, you want to go on a cruise to Hawaii. This can happen. Right? Remind them of the motivation. Remind them why they wanted to set this. It's giving them some instruction and encourage them in discipline. You put a plan in front of them. If they're willing to work it, it'll work for them. And that's it. So that's what I have for you guys. You guys have any questions? Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, this one.
Okay.
Okay, it says, add up budgeted time.
What page, what are you on?
Oh, under, right above charity.
Okay, so, in spent, I put what I actually spent on tithes. What
Yeah.
was budgeted?
So planned is, hey, we're going to put a plan in place, and then you got to keep yourself accountable. That's where we always get off, is, hey, at the beginning of the month, maybe I put this in place, and then at the end of the month, I got to go back and fill it in and be like, did I stay true to my budget? Oh, I saved more money. And you want to challenge them to get creative with their money. Actually, Melissa was telling me how they love to go to the movies, and she's like, yeah, on Tuesdays it's only $5. I never knew that. I don't go to the movies. I'm like, that's great. I'm going to tell everyone whenever they go through this, hey, you want to go on a date with your spouse? Go on Tuesday.
Yep.
You know what? How many restaurants give deals on Monday or on Wednesdays because no one goes out to eat? Hey, go out to eat on Monday and Wednesdays, not on Friday. You're going to wait in a long line and you're going to pay going rate. What if you can get both meals for one price?
Mm-hmm.
They can make the same amount of money go a lot farther. They just got to be creative. It's not being lazy. And that's just what it comes down to. There's a lot of opportunities for you just to encourage them with this.
So this,
Well, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
'Cause
So
there's
this
your-
would be something that you would have each month.
Yes.
You would want a copy of this every month to keep accountable.
Yeah, so you could use this as a template and just write it on a separate piece of paper.
Oh, yeah.
Some people want to do it on their computer, so they'll type it all on their
I
computer.
don't have a computer, so I.
But it gives them the
Yeah.
format. There's
Yeah.
tons of these online. There's tons of budgets available online for, you know, whatever. There's apps on their phone that will, you know, register every purchase they make and put it in their form. But it doesn't, a lot of times, if, this is old school, right? You're writing it down. It's before
Yeah.
you. The more it's before you, the more you're aware of it. The more you're aware of it, the more you're aware of how you're handling it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So one of these every month for them is, now it may be the same, even if they don't fill out the spent, if they just look at it and be like, okay, I was here, yeah. If their income is relatively the same and they're planning on it, then they can look at it and be like, no, I'm staying true to what I put in place. And they'll know that because their debts are being paid off at a rapid rate. So, but if their income fluctuates or if there's a lifestyle change, then it's easy for them to go back to, majority of the things will stay the same.
I know many years ago, when I was working before I retired, I had gotten myself in a horrible financial situation. And I had to face it, and my mom and my sister both are very financially helpful. And my sister is a Christian, but my mom was Catholic. But anyway, my sister investigated somewhere for me to go to get the help, and she found Green Path years ago was the lowest paying. The government would they could only take $25 out for their payment, and they were the most comparable, whatever that word is. And it took 3 years, and I had to bring all these things in, and it was humiliating. But it was so freeing when I called towards the end of the 3 years, and I called and I said, now how many payments do I have left? She said, you just made your last payment. And they were taking like almost $300 out of every paycheck to pay bills off. But when that happened, the joy, and I was not with the Lord at the time, I was backslidden. So now being a Christian, and you know, this is going to be helpful for me because that's what I'm on a very limited income. So, I mean, this is something that's very helpful to me. And what you're saying is bringing back to remembrance. Wow. Okay, I need to do this because things are getting a little bit nuts.
Yeah.
Not too nuts, but nuts enough where if an emergency happened, it wouldn't be a situation.
Yeah.
So
That's
I don't
okay.
want that to be. And that was a very, very helpful thing that you said too.
And Green Path, you know, a debt consolidation solution, some of them are good. You got to be careful if you're advising them
Right.
because some of them, they're no better than these cash advances.
No,
The
no.
rates that they charge these people is, I mean, you might as well just stay in the debt you were in.
And that was, I
Yeah.
said, that was like 20, 25 years
Yeah.
ago.
So some of them are good. One thing I do is if someone comes in and they know they have collections, old bills, whatever, I always take them through a process of calling and negotiating them. By then, I mean, it's a game to them. They've bought them for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
They've already added their junk fee. So my process, what I always do, and I'll have them call on phone just because I think it's fun. Hey, you call, you give them permission to talk to me. Hey, I'm working with them. I'm helping them put their finances together. Hey, they got, I know they owe you $800. They have $325 this month that they can put towards this and settle it. Are you able to negotiate? Sometimes they will. Very rarely will they go that low in the first. Okay, well, she's got some other debts, so we're just going to go ahead and find one that will take this because she's trying to get. Okay, so real quick, and then I'm like, okay, now on the 20th, I want you to call back and do the same thing. Hey, now I got $375. I was able, you know, and it's not scamming them. It's just, but I mean, they've already artificially inflated this thing. And so you do it again, and if they take it, okay, send something to me. I'm going to send you payment. If not, within 3 days of that month, because they all have quotas. They are all salespeople trying to catch, you know, ambulance chase, and all trying to catch a little bit of money out of it. Hey, I got up to $400 if you'll settle, because on average they'll settle 40 to 60% of the original balance. Not always. Student loans, it will never happen. Medical, sometimes they will, but not always, depends on how old they are. But there's no reason to pay face value until they tell you you gotta pay face value. And then they're the last one you pay. It's already in collection. At that point, the credit's already damaged. At this point, you wanna maximize the money you have and do what you can. And then they can realize that they missed an opportunity to get something out of it for maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 months, a year. Go ahead.
So that's when it's gone to collections?
Even if there's a balance, I have no problem calling and be like, hey, we're in a position there, you know, what can you do? A lot of times, unless they are slow or late payers, they don't feel any threat. Now, I don't generally encourage anybody to stop paying their bills so we can negotiate a better deal. That's just not right. But if it's there, they do transition these debts from one to another. People will be like, I heard after 7 years they can't come after me. You're right, but they'll sell it. And as soon as they sell it, it restarts it.
I'm a trustee for a young man that we took off the street. He has a disability with getting income to the point where he had some money in the bank and he hadn't filed taxes for years, but because he's on disability, he wasn't required to. But when we did, the first check came back was $3,000 and he didn't get a dime. Because of that scenario, someplace along the way, he had an issue up north and it just keeps coming down and down and down.
Yeah.
How do you negotiate that one?
Well, it depends on was it a municipal responsibility? Yeah. Very rarely they're in charge in that situation. So unless you have a real compelling case as to why it didn't get paid, because I have seen that where you go in and you explain it and they're willing to work with it. And if you can show that he doesn't have the capacity to understand or excuse me, or have knowledge of it or whatever, then you may gain favor with it. Probably not though. I would lean towards don't expect a discount on that one.
Okay, as far as I have two things. Medical bills.
Mm-hmm.
So you call the hospital, or first of all, if you're paying cash, there's usually a cash price that they're not going to just tell you.
Right.
So that's a thing. But you can call the clinic, the hospital, the whatever building department and say, I can pay this much, but I don't know how much they will accept.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because what you will find is, and this used to drive me crazy in mortgages, you pull someone's credit and they'll be like, oh, you got a collection. They're like, I have medical insurance. How's that even possible? Well, your deductible, whatever your copay is, they didn't send it to you, they sent it to collection. So it's just, their whole system is pretty goofy. And so you should call. You would call them. If you're in the hospital, ask for an advocate and tell them you're in a financial hardship. And because a lot of these hospitals have things in place that will help you right then and there while you're in the hospital or you're needing medical treatment. If you have to go to a medical office for treatment, tell them, I have no insurance. Do you have because there are a lot of doctors, offices, medical facilities that will work with that because they know it will just end up in a collection. And they don't, very rarely is a medical organization taking you to court to try and garnish your wages. They're just gonna leave it on your credit and try and damage your credit forever, right? So the scare tactic is, oh, you'll never qualify for anything. You'll never be able to go and get loans because we're gonna ruin your credit. That's their approach to it. But I would absolutely call and try to negotiate any outstanding bill.
And something else just occurred to me. If you owe, you change cable companies and you don't want to pay your old bill because they messed you up and they were unreasonable, you need to pay that because they'll tend to take it to and try to work it out some other way because that will go against your credit.
Right. Just recently you started seeing, I think it's DTE now reports your payment patterns to the credit bureaus. Utilities never did that.
Yeah.
You might get an assessment against the house, now they put it on your credit.
Wow.
Because they want you to feel the weight of it. Is if you don't pay us, you'll pay it through a higher interest rate in something that you're going to buy down the line.
Okay, so the other thing that I was really wanting to get before, I don't know if Paul, did you get your question answered?
No, I was just wondering the insurance. So you have insurance on there. What insurance does that include? Health insurance, life insurance, and car insurance? What the hell?
Well, yeah, transportation, 10%. A lot of times, it depends on your situation. again, if they're in your targeted area, your car insurance is gonna be way out of whack. So you're gonna have to consider that when you're going into buying a car. So each insurance is, again, each individual is different, but when you start looking at insurance, you see it's right above health. Those can coincide with one another, because life insurance, medical insurance can still be also considered health. It's not necessarily just gym memberships or whatever.
Right, okay,
It's
right.
what are some of these categories? And really, with a model like this, not everyone's gonna have something in every category. If you hate working out, you don't need a gym membership. Or maybe you do. Or recreation. Maybe working out is your hobby, so then you don't need recreational money. Or maybe you don't like to date, and so you don't need recreational money, right? So again, this is just a basis to start looking at how we spend money. It's not gonna be perfect every time.
Right.
But it will certainly identify if something is completely out of whack.
But, I'm sorry, but the transportation is not, insurance is separate from like the transportation.
And again, but transportation is different. You have a car. If you lived in New York, all you would be talking about is subway fare. So again, transportation, again in New York, if you own a car, then we have to put in the cost of parking your car. Not even insuring it or paying for it, you'd have to, right? So transportation might be real out of whack for you there, right? So again, it's not a perfect formula, but it gives you a basis.
Okay, the other thing, go ahead, Doreen.
No, go ahead.
Right. You know, when you're paying on stuff and you're trying to concentrate on payments, you also have to put aside a teeny bit for those emergencies. So it's kind of hard to balance that, because if your car breaks down, you need to have the money, or at least some money, put aside to pay for it, or if you have to call a repairman for your refrigerator. So it's kind of like you have to also be putting away $5 or $10 and paying on something, because if you're paying everything on your debt and you have this emergency, then you're just kind of undoing what you're trying to accomplish.
Absolutely. And so saving, you see in this, saving, he references 10%. When you're getting someone into this situation, they probably have no money to start with, because they're living paycheck to paycheck. Dave Ramsey will tell you it's the $1,000 emergency fund. $1,000 would pretty much cover most things for you. Not everything, but most. If you have a major issue with your home, well then $1,000 would probably cover your deductible, and you're gonna hire a contractor. But for the most part, $1,000 will get you out of most situations. The goal isn't to amass a ton of money to sit on while your debt still tears you apart, right? So we want to get some money in there, and I do encourage the 1,000. I think 1,000 is a good, safe number. It's attainable. It may take someone 6 months to get it, but once they have it, now we can move forward without so many things becoming an emergency. And if they have to dip into it, then we make it a priority to fill it back up before we aggressively attack the debt. They still maintain their payments on their debt, but if we have to deviate from the plan briefly to get the money in the account, then we have to do that. Because as soon as we remove the emergencies, we can plow through with the debt. Did you have a question? Maybe I
forgot.
No. Okay, so I have two. Why is bankruptcy?
What about bankruptcy? Is it advisable? Well, okay, so I think there's probably a legal response and a
Christian response?
a responsible response. The legal response is, hey, the law has put something in place, take full well advantage of it. There's two different, chapter 7 is where you go in and you just wipe out everything. Chapter 13 is where you go in and they put you in a payment plan. When that happens, the court gets involved and says all you creditors cannot apply any more fees or any more interest. The debt stops here. We will be collecting and administrating the repayment of this. So usually it's like a 3-year or 5-year plan. So you're making good on all your debts. So if you have the money and you have the ability, then that is an option. Right, chapter 13. What you've seen is even grossly misused, where people will go in. I've seen people go and buy boats, toys galore, and then go file bankruptcy, so that they can be insulated from the debt, yes. So, but unfortunately, our legal system allows for it, with no, repercussions to those individuals. On the responsible decision, if we have the means to pay our bills, we need to pay our bills. They're our bills. We bought it, we did that. Now, if you're a victim of identity theft, and you fought, the average person spends 600 hours trying to correct identity theft. 600 hours. How much time are you missing from work there? There are situations where bankruptcy is going to be your only option. Medical collections, only some of them can be included. Student loan, never can be included, because it's the government, and they're not going to let you off that easy. So there is a time and a situation for those, but when we're working with people, when you're working with people, that's almost like the concept of, if I just made a little more money. Well, if I just had all my debt wiped away. Well, you still haven't learned how to handle money. You're going to get right back in trouble. I can tell you firsthand of when the economy fell apart, I was watching parents come in, drain their retirement accounts to buy their kids houses because their kids lost their houses. So their kids bought too nice of a house, too much of a mortgage, lost it because they couldn't afford it. Parents were going into, that's crazy. Crazy. And you can tell them, like, are you sure you want to do this? But at the end of the day,
It's their decision.
it's their decision.
But see, that's an emotional decision too.
Yeah.
You have to start making things, when we're doing things black and white, that this is, because you feel like that.
Right.
Yeah,
And
that's
so, and I've seen plenty of people where, a widow, loses everything because her husband handled all the finances, so she didn't know what to do. And so, he left her a lot of money, but she didn't know how to handle it. That's a horrible situation. And I've had men say, well, it's my responsibility as the head of household. No, the head of household is responsible for teaching her so that when you're gone, not only did you provide, but now you protect her. And so we have to be willing to have tough discussions with people because we love them enough not to see them stuck in a rut anymore. And so you guys will have a great platform. Honestly, I think knowing that you guys can speak to someone and guide them, navigate them through their finances is going to give you a platform far greater than whatever situation they come in with.
One more thing, what kind of consequences are there for people when they file bankruptcy, either kind?
Yeah, so normally it depends on what's included. If you include a house into it, which then, if you include a house into a bankruptcy, the house still gets foreclosed on because you're relieved of the debt, but the title of the property has to be taken back from you. So ultimately, then you get a bankruptcy and a foreclosure. So you wouldn't qualify for a mortgage for, I believe, currently it's 5 years. So you're not going to own a house. You may be debt free and could afford it, but you're not going to buy one.
Is that chapter 13 or chapter 7? Or both?
Both, if a house is included. If it's just liability stuff, it's going to wreck your credit for a good while. What I always encourage if someone goes through a bankruptcy is as soon as it's done, you get $200 together and you get a secured credit card. That means I gave you $200, you're giving me a credit line for $200 because you have to do something to reestablish yourself. Otherwise, you'll never get qualified for anything. Whenever you advise with someone, and again, so this sounds a little goofy, I'm telling you get out of debt, and now I'm telling you get a credit card. Secured credit card is I've already put the money on. So if I don't pay the bill, they're just going to keep my money. I don't know anyone that pay. But the nice part about that is it allows them to build credit. Never charge more than 50% of what's available. If I have a $200 limit, I should never ever owe more than $100. If you want the best, the way the credit agencies establish a score and a rating for you is based on a couple variables. How much credit is available to you? How much do you owe compared to what's available? How good do you make your payments? So it's not just, do I pay my bills? There's a lot of variables that go into establishing a score. So if I use the analogy of like tank of gas or a gallon of milk. Buy 1 tank of gas, buy your milk this month on your credit card, pay it off. It shows I'm willing to use it, I'm responsible using it, and I pay it off. All 3 of those gets the most momentum for getting their scores back into a position where they won't be hindered from buying stuff in the future. Everything, credit rating is just a rating that says I'm really good at paying debt at the end of the day. So if someone doesn't want to be in debt, you're penalized by it. You're going to get a worse car note, you're going to get a higher interest rate on anything you borrow from the bank because you're not good at paying back debt. Which you would say, if I'm not in debt, I should be really great. But it's not the way the banks work. They want to get their share out of it.
And so it also, like if you're getting a job, sometimes they look at it. If you're going to rent something, they look at it. It's to me, it doesn't make any difference.
Any like military, government job, finance job, they a lot of times will pull a credit report. Because if you're not responsible with your finances, they can't trust you. I can't trust you with the count to the safe. I can't trust you with top secret documents if you can't pay your bills. There are foreclosures, bankruptcies that will discredit you for employment. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because it's part of your profile. Our credit report, our debt profile, ultimately, on some level, establishes our character. Fair or unfair, I won't say, but on some level it will. And so you see people use it.
I have a question. For people, you had mentioned like fluctuating income. So how do you know, if you were a waitress or something like that, how would you go about helping that person?
Well, the nice part is they brought in 3 months bank statements, so I can see their deposits. So what you do is you have to establish an average and never be on the high spectrum. Whatever you can look at, hey, you're pretty consistently bringing in $250 a week. Okay, this week you brought in $380, but we're not going to look at that. We're going to base everything off of $250 a week. Everything extra is what we're going to use as your momentum.
So like, let's say somebody.
Or what did you do that week that got you so much, and how do we get you to theirs consistently?
So let's say like somebody, maybe they had just gotten off drugs or out of prison or something like that, and they don't have the 3 months established, wait until it's established then?
If they're just getting out of rehab or prison, the emphasis is to get them in a situation that's healthy and then get them working on their debt. The last thing you want to do is have someone come out of prison and tell them they need to start working on their debt. Like, you're free, but you're not free, right? You're actually going to probably promote them right back into whatever they were doing in the first place, because they're going to be like, there's no way. Most people won't even give me a job right now, right? So the goal when you're working with those people is, hey, let's get you established. Once you get a job and you're come in, I want to help you so that those things aren't a problem for you anymore. Even if it's restitution to the courts, whatever it may be. Like, you don't want them to feel imprisoned as soon as they're told they're free.
So, I think you said it, but, okay, so if you were $8,000 in credit card, let's just finger high. And then you were 3,000 to Betty Boop credit. Okay, so the 8,000, say the minimum would be what, like 100?
Just whatever.
Just
Yeah.
100. And then Betty Boop, the minimum is 30. You would want to, what? Pay off the Betty Boop.
Yeah, oh yeah, I want to get rid of my Betty Boop card.
Right.
Okay.
Because the balance is only 3,000.
Right.
So 3,000, 8,000, I would have to pay, even if the payment, even if it was much closer, 6,000, 8,000, and because the interest rate, the payments were very close, you still want to attack the one with the lowest balance.
And then you take that.
Right.
Okay.
Because as soon as you get that off,
The other one.
that's free money. That's your momentum right there. That's where you start
Snowball effect.
really impacting things.
Okay.
And so that an $8,000 credit card with a minimum payment of $100, that's probably like a 9-year payback.
Okay.
Nobody wants to be stuck in that for 9 years.
Right.
So if we can get them real laser focused on getting that 3,000, well, maybe we can cut that in half now,
Okay.
or even better. So yeah, always the lowest balance. Lowest balance is what we want
And
to
that
do.
gives you that encouragement to get the next one paid off, I would think. I know
Yeah,
it would be
absolutely.
me.
And I would say, because you've gone through it, I would share that when you're with people of, I went through this. I know the emotional
Yeah,
feeling of being in debt, of feeling stuck, and I also know the emotional feeling of being released. You know, like, it's okay to, it's encouraged to share those testimonies, because people don't want someone sitting across from them who's never had an issue with money.
no.
Tell them, they're like,
You're rich, what,
you and I are different.
Yeah.
We're not on the same spectrum, so who are you to tell me? But you're becoming real. I'm not saying you gotta show them your budget, but you're becoming real. Like, I understand this, trust me, I understand this. And again, if money affects everyone or a majority of people, if it's not you, someone real close to you has been affected by money,
Oh, yeah.
right? So your sister and your mom are real responsible with it. Maybe it hasn't affected them, but it's affected someone real close, and they've seen and felt.
Yeah, and they,
Right.
there were times when my mother would enable me,
Mhm.
but my sister never did. My sister was the one that said, no, Cindy,
Mhm.
I'm not helping you. I'm gonna help you get help.
Mhm.
And I was angry at her when she did that, because I felt like, you've got all this money, why couldn't you help me? You know, and once I started getting, making those payments, and it was a regular thing for me, I realized, wow, that was so much, it was so much more gratifying to my spirit. And now, being a Christian, looking back, because she's helped me in another situation where I had an emergency and I didn't have the money to do it. And she said, okay, I will pay it for you, but you are gonna make me payments.
that's the other thing.
And I'm making her pay, I think I paid her last payment last month.
Good.
And again, even being a Christian, I was a little upset, like, wow, I'm on a fixed income now and blah, blah, blah and everything, but I understand. As I grow closer to God, I understand why she's doing this, because I'm not learning anything when somebody just bails me out.
Right.
And it seems like a lot of people get bailed out really easily, and they have in my family line. And so it's been like a generational thing. And you know how Pastor Tommy's always preaching about the generational curses being broken. I want it broken.
Really.
So, yeah.
And if you think about that, even if scripturally, if we look at it, she's ultimately becoming responsible for your debt, and scripture advises against it. So,
Yeah.
fortunately, she's got it.
Yes, she
So
does.
it's a different situation when you don't have it and you give it, right? And so we have to be wise when we decide. So you really need to be led by God when you start giving money, and you have to be. I always say you have to be ready to give it. If they pay it back, good. But if not, it ruins a lot of family and relational meetings when someone comes to the table and they know that they owe you money, right?
So
Makes it
it's
real
it's
awkward.
not out of line to, if you have $500 that you advance somebody, to say, but we need to establish this
Yeah.
for that very reason, so that you can come to me and we're paying it back, and you don't have an attitude against them because they're not paying you back, for example. So
Yeah.
that's a thing too, and it can,
Yeah.
if you don't need a big chunk of cash, then you could let the repayment be according to what's comfortable to them, but that's important too,
And it's okay to have hardships. That's called life.
right?
Yeah.
We only have so much that's available to us. But if we're responsible with it, your sister's going to be more inclined to help you when she sees you being responsible with it, because she sees that you're doing everything. If she sees you being reckless with it, excuse me, then that's probably when she's going to not be as generous with extending some credit to you, right? So, yeah.
If you charged $1,000 and you paid at the end of the month, there's no interest.
There's no
Correct.
finance charges.
Correct.
You let me finish. Oh, I apologize.
Are you two sisters?
Yes.
That's all.
Okay, I don't wanna appear stupid.
No,
So who's, okay, so if I lent you $1,000, you pay it back before interest. Where am I making money? How's that credit company making money because there's no finance?
That's
The
a-
companies that have the, that like Macy's, whatever, they have to pay for you using that credit card.
Oh,
Go
they-
ahead, go ahead.
so I think your question is how, like, the credit card company, if you're paying it off before there's any interest, how are they making their money?
Yes,
The majority of people aren't paying it off.
Huh?
The majority of people aren't paying it off. You're not normal if you pay your credit card statement in full. They
Oh,
know,
because-
and that's why is it, hey, you're totally content, all of a sudden you get a letter, hey, we just upped your limit 5,000.
Yeah.
Well, why would they do that?
'Cause
They want to entice you to go use it.
Right, exactly,
What have you been thinking about that your card wasn't high enough? Let me give you a little bit more.
right,
Dangle a little carrot in front of you.
exactly.
Oh,
Hey, I just got 5,000 more. Did you?
Yes, the stores have to pay,
the stores have to.
yes.
Oh,
What was the
That's
what- 'cause it's
percentage
always-
of people in credit card debt? Was it 75%
That's
of
right.
the
American
United
people, yep.
States?
Oh,
So
okay.
75% of people do not pay that credit card
Right.
payment off every
Right.
month.
So they're making money
Just
somewhere.
They're either
So they're
making a
lots of
minimum
money,
payment
so
or
in
maybe
other
a
words,
little
they
bit
aren't
more.
worried about.
I use a credit card. I'll be clear.
Okay.
I buy my gas with credit card. I'll buy my groceries because I know that but I don't buy more groceries than I need. I don't drive more so I can buy more gas for points. Like, I don't get stupid with it. I use it to my benefit. Hey, you want to give me points? I'll take your points. I'm maximizing what I'm going to do anyways. I
Right.
don't overcharge. I don't buy stuff that I don't need because I don't want it.
Right, give me money for using your card.
Right. You really want to get over on the bank?
Right.
Don't pay them interest and take their points.
Right,
Uh-huh.
Right.
that's
Oh,
what I
I just
do.
always wondered, like,
Yeah.
if you're not getting interest off me, it's just always like, well, how, but then
They're hoping
they
for the
getting
one
it
day.
for
Yep.
everybody else.
They're hoping for the one day.
Stores
Trust me,
have to pay.
they are making plenty of money.
So they're not worried
It
about
wouldn't be a
little
business.
They're making plenty of money.
Okay.
And
That's
yeah,
why they're throwing them out to everybody.
right. And like your sister was saying, every merchant is charged 3%. We just opened up credit card giving. If someone wants to give their tithe, I have to pay 3%. I have to pay 3% for someone to give me their tithe now because everyone wants to do everything digitally, right? So I don't get that 3%. The credit card processor gets it.
So it would be better for the church if we wrote out a check?
Or ACH, the online checking.
Online checking would not be the 3%?
Nope, it's $1.
Oh, it's a credit card if somebody
If
does
someone
their
wants to
tithe.
use their credit card or
Oh,
debit card. Yep.
okay, because sometimes I do it online but it's my debit card.
Yep.
It's my bank, I mean, I don't,
Even a debit card, because a debit card is processed like a credit card.
is it?
It
Yeah.
is.
So I can
Because
do
all the merchant, all the legal side of the merchant is included in that.
Well, I don't want to do that to the church, so I'm gonna change it.
Well, you know
Well, the
what,
church appreciates that.
what I do is they can send checks from your
Yeah.
bank, and that doesn't cost.
I have checks, I have tons
No,
of
but I mean,
checks,
like,
yeah.
No, like they write it out.
You could call your bank and say, I want you to send out a check on my behalf.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Or online, you can set
Online,
up your
I-
checking account online, so when
Oh,
you say
okay.
give, it just pulls
I
it out of
can
your
do
checking
that,
account.
I can, because I've done that with other payments
with other
that are
bills, and the bank
automated.
will send it to DTE, or the bank will send it to New Life.
Okay, and
or
it
your
will
church.
show up as like a little check,
A check with
Picture.
a number, yeah.
yeah. Okay, I'll do that.
I have just
Definitely.
like one more question. So, when we paid off our school debt and now I'm back into it, it's great. But what Wayne State did is they actually made you go in and put everything into a calculator so that you could see in like, whatever amount of years when you're done, how much you're gonna owe and start right off the bat. And it really was like you look at it and you're like, holy crap, why am I doing this kind of
Right.
thing? And I thought that was, number one, a really good tool that they were actually using was to jolt the students to know, like, you are gonna owe this money. So that was something that I don't remember experiencing before, but my mom helped me a lot the first time, so it could have been there, I just never saw it. Is there something like that, where you kind of put it in a calculator, whether it's credit card debt or whether it's something else. I feel like if I could actually show somebody, like, look, when you don't pay your credit card, this is what happens. Is there something like that?
Most credit cards, or I think all credit cards now
Now
on their
has to.
statement, has to show if you pay the minimum, this is how long it will take you to pay it off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they do.
Right,
This is-
That's showing
Yeah.
how much it is.
right, because
It's on every credit card statement.
if you look at when mortgages, even so, the final disclosure said, oh, you're taking out 100,000. If you pay this in 360 equal payments, a 30-year mortgage, you're gonna pay an extra 125,000. There's times you'll pay more in mortgage than even the cost of the house.
So it'll actually add it up on the bill.
Right, it will say right on there, if you pay the minimum, this is how long it'll take you to pay it off. It won't
And the
say,
total.
it won't say the total dollar amount, it will just show just the amount of months. So all you gotta do is take that payment and times it by that month and say, okay, this $400 bill is gonna cost you $768 if you pay the minimum each month. Right, so, and again, people don't look at these things, they don't count the cost all the way out. And student loan, that doesn't surprise me, they're over $1 trillion in debt, right? And so, talk about the government wanting some money, like $1 trillion, so, yeah.
That's
But
just,
even with
that's
the,
just a drop on the bucket.
Yeah, right.
but even with the student loans, they're helping them now come out of, well, they were at a point where they could get a lot of that debt canceled.
Some situations, so I know that if you qualify, like if you work in a service industry, ministry, nonprofit, something like that, you can ultimately qualify that your payment is based off of your income. If you make that minimum payment for 10 years, they will erase the balance of your debt.
No, but they were doing something beyond that, because that was regular, but they were doing something beyond that, because they were saying that it's something about the debt that they put them in, that they knew is some controversy about how they set that debt up.
Oh,
Mhm. And so they were starting to cancel out debt. As a matter of fact, they were talking about it again about a month or so ago on NPR radio. They're talking about it again, about canceling, being able to get a lot of that debt canceled out for student loans, because it's like they, for lack of a better term, railroaded them. And so, and they know that they did, and they got caught. And so, okay, you can get a portion of this canceled out now.
well,
Well,
that's,
so I'm not familiar with that, but I do know that they will give you access to loans above your student loan. So my best friend growing up leased a car through college with his student loans. I mean, insult to injury. It was a leased car, and he's still paying on it today. I mean, he's been out of school 20 years.
That's the interest.
Yep.
You can do like living expenses.
Yeah,
and
that's the problem, is a kid coming out of high school who has no concept of money, has no understanding of money, is just told, oh, school's 25,000 a year, we're gonna give you 30,000 because
you can.
we don't know. The kid doesn't have any brain, he thinks when he gets out of school, he's gonna make $1 million. Until 4 years later, and reality sets in. Oh, and then, by the way, did we tell you the interest clock started day one? So even while you're in school and there was no way for you to work to get it, right? So it's really, and that's why, I mean, you're seeing more and more actually encouragement for people looking at 2 years degree, like what field can you do with just 2 years of education? More skilled trades. I mean, everyone was told you, oh, you gotta go to school to be employable. So for the last 20 years, that's what every kid was doing, is going to college so that they could, and so it pulled from the pool of manual labor, which now they need a ton, which, so there's a lot of alternatives now to that. Kids should not just be told that's your only option.
Right.
And for a lot of kids, they go to the military. Through, my 2 grandsons went to West Point. They're debt-free, they'll be out next year and everything's paid for. And they'll serve their time after they got out of West Point. So, had they gone to, they were accepted at West Point and at U of M, they've been in debt at U of M.
Right.
For a long time to come.
Right.
I think when the recruiter talked to the graduating class that year, that was $500,000 per kid that went to West Point that the government paid for. And these kids that went to U of M paid that on their own dime.
Right.
And that's why, and how long do you pay that off? Doctors and nurses spend years and years and years getting rid of that debt that they incurred. And everybody wants to know why your costs are so high.
Yeah.
Right.
So it doesn't matter if you make 150,000 when you're 400,000 in debt.
Yeah,
Like, you still wanna leave school and start your life sometime, which means more debt.
right, but a lot are doing that because I have a couple of nieces and one of the saints from the church, that's the route they're taking, the military. And they do matter of fact, they're doing the, not the reserves, what is it called?
National Guard?
National Guard, they're doing the National Guard, and, then that's paying for their school.
Well, sometimes kids go to school, they go these 4, 6-year degrees, and they get out and they don't work in their field. And so they're not making the money that they thought they were gonna make in the field they were going to school for, and yet they got a degree that helps them, but if you're not trained to work in the real world, where do you go? For us, in this room, most of us, I think, except these 2 young people back here, the jobs that we had when we were kids are no longer there. And yet the jobs today that people don't want, they still make a living at. It's just an upside down world.
Okay. So a lot of things for you guys to think about when you get to sit down in front of these people, And again, Scripture is the place where you get just educated on this. So I would encourage you to see what God has to say about this. Right?
I think that's it.
Thank you.
That was very
Glad I could
good.
help.
Thank you.